What you call that noise?
The XTC Podcast.
XTClimelight.com.
What do you call that noise?
What do you call that noise?
Apple Venus, that whole record, it's like a candy shop for your ears. Kind of, you walk in and you're just like, I want it all.
Welcome back, friends, old and new, to What Do You Call That Noise, the XTC podcast, and welcome back to another candy shop for your ears. That was the voice of Madison Cunningham, who is not only a brilliant Grammy Award-winning songwriter and musician, but also a big fan of XTC. In today's episode, Madison talks about what fascinates her about a band that had come to an end by the time she was a toddler, as well as about her own approach to creating music, and very fine music it is too. I'm Mark Fisher, and before we go headfirst into that interview, let's have a listen to the music that you have been creating. If you're new to the podcast, the brief is to share a song that has been influenced by XTC in some way. This time it's the turn of Stephen Dahill, aka Daffy, and his song John Chivery.
What do you call that noise?
Hi there, Mark, and to all you What Do You Call That Noise listeners. My name's Stephen Dahill, and I record music under my nickname Daffy. I've been an XTC fan since I first heard Science Friction, and though I don't have the musical and songwriting chops of the chaps in the band, I thought it would be nice to try and record something that captured a little bit of the spirit of what I think XTC is all about. So I wrote and recorded this song, John Chivery. I suppose the song's trying to capture a bit of Oranges and Lemons era XTC type jangle, and with a melody that's at least trying to sound a little bit like XTC. You'll have to be the judges as to whether I've succeeded at all. The song was written while I was watching the BBC adaptation of Charles Dickens's Little Dorrit, where the character John Chivery falls in love with Little Dorrit, who's the lead female character in the book. And I thought, what would happen if a girl sitting at home watching the TV series took pity on the John Chivery character and fell in love with him or with the actor that played him? To confuse matters further, I've introduced the idea of Puck from A Midsummer Night's Dream, who's playing tricks on everybody by making them all fall in love with the wrong people. Anyway, I don't know if this is pop, but I hope some of you enjoy some of the sounds in this that maybe are a little bit reminiscent of XTC. I was very pleased that when the album this is from, Seconds Away, got reviewed, the local reviewer involved actually picked up on the Andy Partridge influences in this. You can catch up on my music on SoundCloud, or I've got a couple of albums out there on iTunes. Cheers.
Ooh, John Chivery, so sad and blue, just 'cause she won't love you. Ooh, John Chivery, so sad and blue, just 'cause she won't love you. The puck of love's been playing tricks with his dust again on the souls of men. His victims swearing love, oh love, till their mortal ends, never try again. John has it really bad. It's her and nothing, nothing's all he has. But she won't have him now, no, she wants someone else, then she's spurned herself. Ooh, John Chivery, cold and shivery, so sad and blue, just 'cause she won't love you. Oh, John Chivery, so good and true, but she'll never love you. The puck of book and screen's been messing with minds again, and the cares of women. Been setting traps for hearts with fictions more real than truth, gonna steal some youthful care. Reading him in affectionate need takes pity which sows a seed. And would John have the heart to rebuff in turn as he once was spurned? Oh, John Chivery, cold and shivery, so sad and blue, 'cause someone will not love you. Oh, John Chivery, who's sad and blue, just because she won't be loved by you. Loved by you. was a girl grew sad and old, dreaming of a love which she never told. There once was a boy so good but blue, never grew up, so his prophecy came true. Maybe he can love her when the screen comes down. Maybe she can love you when you win renown. Maybe she can love him when the puck his tricks have turned around. Tricks have turned around. Tricks have turned around.
What do you call that noise?
Dickens, Shakespeare, and oranges and lemons all in one package. And a very fine package it was too. Thanks for that, Stephen. And as he said, you can hear more of that kind of thing at soundcloud.com/Stephen-Dahill. Dahill spelled Dahill. If you have an XTC inspired song, feel free to let me know at mark@xtclimelight.com. There's a few ahead of you in the queue, but eventually you'll get to the top of it, I'm sure. If you've been enjoying What Do You Call That Noise, the XTC podcast, well, remember, I wouldn't be able to do it without the support of the lovely, lovely, lovely XTC fans on Patreon. Many thanks to all of you who have contributed. If you'd like to do the same, all you have to do is go to patreon.com/Mark Fisher and decide on your level of support. There are 3 levels, and if you opt to be a knight in shining karma, I'll read out your name at the end of each episode. For a musician's eye perspective on XTC, well, I think you should check out What Do You Call That Noise, an XTC Discovery book, which you can still buy at xtclimelight.com. And you'll also find details of all the podcasts at that website as well. Now, it's time to hear from the abundantly talented Madison Cunningham. Madison is based in Los Angeles and has been nominated half a dozen times for Grammy Awards, and she actually won the Best Folk Album for her excellent 2022 album, Revealer. And we discuss in the podcast whether best folk is the best word for it. This is pop, remember, people. I also recommend her second album, Who Are You Now, from 2019. And you can see Madison, and I recommend you do, on YouTube performing XTC's River of Orchids with Chris Thiele and Jacob Collier. And you can get a sense of her influences if you stay on YouTube and check out her covers of artists, including Radiohead, The Beatles, and Tom Waits. And she's also a fan of the Beach Boys, Fiona Apple, Sufjan Stevens, Joni Mitchell, Juana Molina, Bjork, and Rufus Wainwright, which covers a lot of ground. So let's go. Here is Madison Cunningham.
What do you call that noise?
I have to start off, Madison, by saying how fantastic your gig was at Celtic Connections in Glasgow recently.
Oh, you were there.
I was there, and it was wonderful. And it was one of those rare gigs where you kind of think, as soon as it finishes, I think, I just want to hear that again.
Wow.
I think just because there's 2 things. You were playing a lot of new material, but I think also the material that, if there's some more familiar, it just felt to me like it was so rich and so detailed and so worthy of repetition that, wow, listening to it wasn't enough. Did you have a good time in Glasgow?
Man, the honest answer to that is no.
It was right after the LA fires, wasn't it?
It was right during. So I just was like, my whole body was turned inside out and kind of rattling with nerves and fear and anxiety and just wanting to be back in the city. And I felt like, that's kind of why that Glasgow show ended up turning out to be what it was, because I just was in this like state of, I only want to play things that feel relevant to this moment. I don't want to try and like, I don't know, reach back into the jukebox sort of and play things that I think people are expecting to hear. And it was like the first time I felt like I ever gave myself permission to play a show for me, which is maybe weird to say because all of them are to a certain degree for the people on stage as well, as the people who are in the audience. But this was just one of those moments where I was like, I'm just gonna leave it all on the stage. And like I felt so attached, so connected to Los Angeles kind of during that whole show. And that was like the one moment of peace that I experienced that whole trip, actually.
And that's well, there was two things that makes me think of. One is that you did seem, for all your tension and so on, you seem very at home on stage. That's the first time I've seen you live, and you do feel is the stage the place where you are very comfortable?
Oh, I mean, I would say I would hope so at this point.
You've got used to it.
If I was a pilot, I have logged so many air miles, like I mean, yeah, I guess that's a silly metaphor because we're musicians and we're in planes and on wheels all the time. Like we're just, and on stages all the time. And like, I would hope at this point that I am, I found some stability in being on the stage. Cause as a like a younger person, I grew up singing in church and stuff since I was a 10, 12-year-old. But when I was like, 18, 19 was when I really started playing my own music out in public spaces. And I was just terrified and couldn't get a hold of my nervous system. Couldn't I just was pretty convinced that it wasn't for me for a minute. And then something changed where I found my way into loving the art of performing and learning how to trust it and learning how to not, existentially freak out every time I had to get up in front of people. It's like the second you forget that you're being observed, you can go to a place and you can remember and you can enjoy music and you can enjoy the making of it in front of other people,
And that, coupled with that unfortunate experience of having LA fires in your head while you were trying to do a gig, I wonder whether that's for all that you wouldn't want to go through that again. I wonder whether it's actually a learning experience for you because you now know that you can go on stage and do your own thing and be in your own place on your own terms. It sounds to me like the sort of thing Bob Dylan would do, just come out and go electric or whatever.
Yeah, go electric, exactly. But yeah, I mean, for me, I guess I kind of went acoustic. Kind of did the opposite. But yeah, music is such a beautiful vacation from trauma, and that's always been that way for me, more so in my adult years than in my childhood. But it very much existed as sort of like an igloo for emotions at that time as well. But yeah, I feel it very intensified at this point in my life where like music has never felt clearer or easier, because everything else feels so hard.
Igloo for your emotions. That should be the next title of your next album, I think.
Igloo. I'm going to regret that tomorrow.
Yeah.
It just happened to me. Just happened to me. I didn't mean it. I mean, I kind of meant it.
And you did refer to this as though it was something that didn't normally happen, but there was something very, very powerful about how you began that gig, because you had your back to the audience for the first three songs. And it was, I can tell you from the audience point of view, it was incredibly powerful because you're kind of thinking, when's she going to turn around? When's she going to turn around? When are we going to see her face? And it gave you it might not have felt like that from your point of view. From my point of view, I thought it was very theatrically, very strong to do that.
I actually love that. Yeah, it was I mean, not to ruin the moment, it was a bit of a stage plot issue, and that's why I had to angle myself that way. But I kind of like, there is a lot of mystery, and I actually felt like, oh, this has kind of always been my dream, is to walk out on a stage and not have to look at the audience for the first beat, And I quite enjoyed the power of like scarcity.
Yeah. And it reminded me a bit, I work as a theatre critic, so I see a lot of theatre, and there's a thing that a lot of sort of professional actors do, which is particularly famous people, is like when they get called upon the stage, and now, ladies and gentlemen, it's ... And they wait and they keep a little pause, and the audience is, there's that sort of
Where are they?
expectation. Where are they? Where are they? And then they come, and it had that feel, except even more extended across 3 songs.
I love that. I'm so relieved that you like that show. I mean, it was also a risk. I was like, oh shit, we're playing literally all new songs that we only had one rehearsal for. So we'll see what happens. It was really fun. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. No, it definitely worked. Yeah. And exactly as I say, in that way, it made me want to go, next time we've rehearsed, I'll come round and see them again.
I'm so glad.
On YouTube, you can see at least 2 versions. I don't know whether you've done it more, but you've done River of Orchids twice, at least, maybe more, but there are 2 versions of that song with Jacob, one with Jacob Collier and Chris Thile. On that one, the most recent one, all 3 of you agree on stage that Apple Venus changed your lives. And I don't think you're just saying that out of because you were embarrassed into saying it on stage. Is it true though? Did Apple Venus change your life?
Yeah, that wasn't like a charitable statement. It was like, that's real for me. I like, there's been a few moments in my life where something will kind of crack me open immediately, and it's not been many times. The Beatles is one of them, and then listening to River of Orchids, I had learned it for that radio show that Chris was hosting for a few years called Live from Here, and I was so obsessed with the intersection of harmony and rhythm and the way he like it. At first I'm still unclear on this, but I thought that the song was all done with like MIDI strings and horns and stuff. I think they're real, but it has this sort of um like computer like sound, which I hope that doesn't sound offensive to me. That is like the coolest thing ever. Like to take like, very classical instruments and make it sound kind of like like digital. Whatever is happening in that recording became the bar of which I started to make music and think about me writing songs, because I just was like that, these melodies and these lyrical images, and like I also loved that there was lack of drums. Like there's no real rhythm. It's just like all happening within these stringed instruments, and that set me on a really exciting journey too of how to think about constructing songs in recorded form.
And in fact, that's reminded me of on that second recording, or most recent recording, there's a conductor. And I sort of, there's a conductor, because you kind of think, is this even possible for a whole orchestra to play without a click track or without whatever? And you proved that it was possible. But you're exactly right. If I'm remembering correctly, I think the Andy Partridge will have written it in a sort of computery sort of way, and then given it to instruments, so it maintains that sort of combination of the real and the formulaic. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think so. But
I should have looked this up before we started talking.
And I have only it's not long ago since I did a podcast about it as well, so I'll have to go back and refresh myself. But was that your first encounter with XTC? And we are just about to come up to the 25th anniversary of Wasp Star, so it's basically 25 years since XTC did anything, and you being not much older than 25, I think. Are you 29?
I'm 28.
28.
Yeah.
That I'm fascinated by the idea that people are still discovering XTC, long after they did anything. Even it's ancient history to you, really. So I'm intrigued to know how you discovered them in the first place.
I find it surprising, and also maybe in the same breath really unsurprising to see people discovering a band like that still, because I think there's so much relevance and timelessness in those constructed songs. Yeah, I heard them for the first time because of Chris Thile on Live from Here. Well, that was my first. Actually, I'd probably heard Making Plans for Nigel, somewhere in a public space, or over the radio or something, but I didn't understand the genius of Andy Partridge quite. And I think River of or Apple Venus, that whole record really displays like just his playfulness. I always call it's like a candy shop for your ears. Kind of you walk in and you're just like, I want it all. I want to I want to inhale it all. He just has this like he satisfies my musical sweet tooth at least. One thing I wanted to talk about was I just saw that Apple Venus was put on streaming platforms for the first time since it was released. Do you know why?
Because Apple Venus and Wasp Star are the only two albums that the remaining rump of XTC still have rights over, because they were released post Virgin, and so Andy Partridge and Colin Moulding didn't like the idea of getting paid 0.0000 cents, 1 cent on Spotify,
right.
and so was kind of resistant to doing it at all. Somebody illegally had put their records, the Wasp Star and Apple Venus, on Spotify, which they managed to get taken off.
I listened to Apple Venus on YouTube for a handful of years, and then Jacob Collier ended up just giving me a Dropbox file with it, which maybe that's how people start to upload. Like I don't know where he even got that, but I just would listen to that Dropbox link, like incessantly.
Because it's making me think you're sort of the post CD generation as well, aren't you? Because you're so used to everything being online.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely I remember CDs. That probably went on till I was like a 12-year-old,
Mm-hmm,
and when I was 12 was probably the time when streaming came to be, or a little before. So wild. And then little did I know that that would affect my whole life and the way that like I bend to my career and stuff, and the way that like it's wild.
And that is sort of linking into what I've been thinking about people of your generation discovering music for the first time, in the sense that now I look back at it, because when I was listening to music in the late 1970s, actually there was only 25 years of rock and roll around. I mean, that's relatively a small amount. Subsequently, both because of the amount of music has been made, but also because of the number of years, but also because so many people have access to uploading their music. You can hear it on all sorts of platforms. It was mind-boggling in 1979 how much was out there. So the idea in this year, 2025, that do you find it overwhelming, or have you found a way of negotiating so that you've found the artist that you like? And
I do find it overwhelming. I think Spotify is a reminder of how much is out there and how many holes you can fall down, and I'm always just like, I don't really know where to start. I don't know. I love vinyl for that reason, because you just don't really have an option. You just listen to a full record from beginning to end. And I love getting educated on records and like artists and their catalog. And XTC, I will admit, there's still so much music there. And I love Skylarking and Drums and Wires and Apple Venus, but there's still so much that I haven't discovered. And I like look at the Spotify and I'm like, wow, that's a lot of information, and yet I know I still haven't gotten to X artist or like whatever, and what I like to do is just like go to trusted people and be like, what are you listening to? I want to get obsessed with something. I'll just give it as many spins as it takes for it to really penetrate. Like Bjork was one of those artists for me that I had kind of resisted and felt on the outside of, and I didn't understand. And then I heard Homogenic, and that record, I don't know, it really found me at a time where I needed it. And then I just got her. Like I just wanted to fall into every Bjork rabbit hole. I have to just let myself find the things that find me first, kind of. Otherwise I'll just be searching endlessly, like in a record store, being like, I don't know, this cover looks weird. Let's see what this does,
Yeah.
Which
And
that's
I mean,
fun too.
I have it's the same I'm sure it's the same problem for all of us, that it is lovely to do what you describe and just sort of completely immerse yourself in an album. And as someone who creates albums yourself, I imagine that you would like people to do that, to just stick with your record rather than jumping from song to song and artist to artist. But all the time, I'm listening to something once thinking, oh yeah, that sounds quite good. Oh, but there's this other thing, and I'm moving on to it, and you have a very superficial response to everything. And actually, because I have known that I was talking to you today, it's been nice just to be listening to your music and just focusing on that is a good excuse to do it.
It's making me think about how we can give fans incentive to listen to a whole record before it's just released to the hands of playlisting, and because that's how people listen to stuff, and that's cool. But it's like I believe in full statements more than I ever have, and then that's the way I write songs too. It's like they're on my new record, there's a few songs on there that kind of don't make sense without the others, and I think that doesn't take away from their value. It just means that they exist in a larger story.
Yes, I think there's an interesting phenomenon that certain songs they're not quite strong enough. They're definitely not strong enough to be singles, and they're maybe too quirky to be independently on their own or whatever. But in the context of having two other songs on either side of them, they find that other tone or shade of light or whatever that defines them.
Yeah,
in an interesting way. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. You could, I suppose, when Christina gave you that chance to join in on River of Orchids, you could have done it out of duty, but something caught you about it. Something made you think, no, actually, there's more to this going on than just doing a cover version of something.
I think it's the push your car from the road. It's the way that melody works with the tension of the notes that are being played underneath. And then the harmony that he sings, and I just have never heard anything like that. And it's like the melody. I was so jealous when I heard it. I wished I'd written it. It's that sort of an infectious earworm of a melody. And I've tried to write some like it since, and I've obviously never come close. But I wrote a song called Sunshine Over the Counter, which was directly influenced by the way that I was trying to write a guitar part that sounded a little bit like those string parts, and something that was counter to what I was what the top line I was singing. And I have a few songs like that where I think of Andy, or I think of what would Andy do, and and it's a fun thread to pull. You're like, oh, you could do this, you could play this chord. He's not afraid to use all of the chords.
Yeah. And what's lovely when I listen to your version of River of Orchids is I can see because I'm looking at video, you doing a harmony that when I hear it, I think, oh yeah, that is on the record, isn't it? But you're doing it because it doesn't sound a very logical harmony, but it sounds fantastic.
No. Yeah, that's why I love it so much. You would never think it's not the harmony that most people would outline a melody with. It's like an opponent almost. And I love when music argues and agrees over and over again in a song. And he's kind of the master at that dynamic.
There's something I've heard you say in other interviews that I think can be applied to XTC, which is that you've talked about the idea of technicality versus sincerity. And I think one of the things that XTC do, which their imitators often don't do, is find emotion in the cleverness. So it's not just clever for its own sake. And sometimes I'm thinking a long way back, but when I used to do Limelight, the XTC fanzine, people would send me tapes of their band, and they would often be angular, fast, punky, whatever, but you didn't warm to them. There was no, and it's often down to melody. Actually, the melody was lacking, and the melody often is the thing that carries the harmony. But that's something, because I always have to be careful about talking to people who have been inspired or influenced by XTC, because there's no sense in which your music sounds like XTC, but I think there is a sense in which you have a similar approach and a similar sense of values or similar
Yeah.
aesthetic or whatever. That means that those things that you just described, that those tensions, do come across in the music.
Yeah, I so agree with you that while they are clever and they're on the inside of what's happening, they seem so led by instinct and soul and heart, and like that's never once been in question. There's a lot of real proggy bands out there where you're like, okay, you're just kind of this is like for yourself, you know, or like you're getting off on how complicated and squirrely this thing is, and like I don't really like. I've been through this phase in my life where like virtuosity and sort of cleverness for cleverness sake was a tool that I used to prove myself to people, and that was for myself. And like now I write songs for myself, but from the perspective of like needing to liberate myself from my own thoughts or my own sort of emotional turmoil, or like and that to me is sincerity. And I mean, I'm not saying I always achieve sincerity, but I do think that I aim to. And so now I'm willing to throw things off the boat that I wouldn't have before. It's like, if that's too cool, it doesn't stay. Like if that's too cool, we're sinking. We're going to keep throwing all of the things that are making, the ship kind of go underwater and in a musical sense. Like now in my life, I just want to play things that feel rather easy and true, and not like all of my older songs were felt slightly complicated. Like I won't play those anymore. It doesn't feel so. I mean, those are only a few years old, 3 or 4 years old, but it's just crazy how quickly something can feel irrelevant to you in your life. And it takes just one event of tragedy or trauma for everything to be like, for all of your values to be switched up.
And a second event can then bring new focus to them. You might be able to rediscover them in 10 years' time. That's always a possibility.
That's the beauty. The foundation's laid. You can build whatever you want on top of it, rearrange it, refurbish it. As a new rule to songwriting, I've wanted everything to feel, obviously, complexity. I think is not disingenuous to who I am or how I think about music, or the way that I love it too, and you have to hear love in somebody's creation of something. Otherwise you also don't hear the sincere. That's the thing. Like if you also go, well, now I'm just going to write simple songs. That's also a tool. It's also like a clever for cleverness sake in the opposite direction.
A lot of the greatest art in all mediums is deceptive in the sense that it seems very, very simple, but to achieve that simplicity, you need to be pulling back and removing and to give the illusion of something that's pure. But actually, it's very difficult to achieve that thing. You don't just start off naively.
Yeah, you have to earn the ease of something. Like everything that sounds effortless is built, is achieved through so much effort. Always. Yeah.
And that's, in your case, it's also and in XTC's case, it's fortified by, I think, a pop spirit. You like a good tune in simple tunes. So the tune might come from somewhere unexpected, which is the thing that gives it interest and tension and so on. But you can sing it. You can go away and hum it. Yeah,
that's to me the hope. Anytime anyone says I can't stop thinking about this song or I can't stop singing it, to me that'll always be a compliment. Or like catchiness, that I maybe once would have been insulted by that as a younger person, being like, shit, I want to be like avant-garde, and I want to, and it's like I don't give a shit about that anymore. I want to be catchy. I want you to not be able to shake me.
And the cover versions that you've done, again, you can see them on YouTube. You tend to have gone for songs, I suppose, that are like that. They are very deceptively simple, but you don't do songs that don't have a strong melody in them.
Yeah, what's the point? I don't know. boring.
I don't know if you realize, but one of those covers that you do is The Kiss by Judy Sill, which is Andy Partridge's favorite song. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
No. And when you do know that, a lot of things start making sense. You can hear
Whoa.
Nights in Shining Karma, for example, is
Whoa.
a Judy Sill song, I think, trying to
God.
get out.
Wow. That's one of my favorite songs as well. It's like another example of a song I wish I had written. Judy Sill writes those songs for me. And so does Andy. Like 1,000 Umbrellas. When I heard that for the first time, I was like, man, I wish I wrote that too. It's so good. Like that. And when you smile and don't, he has a way of like releasing the tension in this way that the payoff is so profound and so satisfying every single time. And that's what blows me away the most, I think, about him, is his choruses.
Yes. And again, it can be against something quite jarring and uncomfortable, but then that release of, oh gosh, it can be like that. Even as you're saying those words, I'm sort of feeling my chest getting bigger and kind of swelling out.
Yeah.
And oh, the world is out there. We can open into it.
Easter Theater is another one of those.
The
chorus just goes into this place that you couldn't have expected, and you needed it so badly.
And actually, that also reminds me, again, listening to other interviews that you've done about the construction of your songs, reminds me sometimes of, not in all cases, but of the construction of some XTC songs, in the sense that Andy, I don't know about Colin Moulding so much, but Andy Partridge will have two disparate things that don't really go together, and he'll sort of say, well, what happens if you do this? And I think you've done the same thing, haven't you? Or you do that a lot, I think.
Yes. Yeah, I'll have a lot of fragments of ideas, and there's some of them that I get frustrated by the fact that they're not being used, and I'll just go, well, this thing is working right now, why don't I put it together with this thing and see what happens? And I mean, more often than not, nothing happens. But then you have the lucky 1% of times where it all everything checks out and it works.
Yeah.
The best day in the world.
And presumably that's a surprise to you as much as it is to the listeners, because those two things weren't born together, but somehow they've been jammed together.
Yeah, exactly. I think they've grown up. They've grown into each other, kind of.
I get the sense that as well as analyzing your own music, you are an analyst. I can't say that word. You are an analyst of other people's music. Do you pick them apart and try and work out, in the case of XTC, for example, do you try and work out what's going on there? And
I was just talking to a friend about this. She said a really powerful thing about keeping music and the music we love a bit of a mystery, like a sacred mystery. And she said, I don't really like learning about my favorite songs. She goes, because in order to dissect something, you have to kill it. I've thought about that a lot. It's like I care so much about these songs and these songwriters and the craft of songwriting, which causes me to ask a lot of questions and to be like, what? How did you arrive there? And actually, sometimes it's just like it's one of those questions that you'll never have the answer to, because Andy Partridge himself probably couldn't tell me exactly how he arrived there. The subconscious is so powerful, and like once you like plug yourself into that space, then something takes over that's mysterious and kind of godly and spiritual. While so much of my impulse is to be like, tell me everything, what happened here, I think the other piece of me that is the enjoyer and the worshiper of music wants to just be in awe and not ever really get given a proper explanation, but I'm torn between the two impulses all the time, because I want to write better songs. I'm constantly wanting to be a better musician and a better thinker, and that does require curiosity and asking questions.
Yeah, I sometimes have the for some reason, this applies to Echo and the Bunnymen's Heaven Up Here more than any other album. I don't know why I think about it in this way, but it's almost like it's not being played by guitars and drums and bass and a singer. It's like it's happening on some ethereal level that is just purely emotional to me, and
I love that.
and it becomes abstracted so much. But it makes me think actually that probably the way music goes into your ears is in an abstract way. It is, you're not thinking, oh, that's the note of C played on an acoustic guitar. You're thinking, oh, that's the blueness of this sound. That's the whatever it is that it makes you feel.
Yes, I love how you just said that. Where it didn't sound like it was necessarily being played by a guitar or drums. That to me means it's inspired by something else. So often we play instruments based on how we think they ought to be played rather than just playing them and being like, what could the guitar possibly do other than the things I give it credit for doing? Where else can it go? That excites me about music more than anything. Like playing the guitar like a harp or a piano or more like drums, like I think that's again back to River of Orchids. That's why I love it so much, because there is no technical like rhythmic instrument, but everything else is filling those shoes. And I think that's really innovative, and we ought to be thinking of music more in those terms,
Yeah, and I think Andy Partridge is, I think in personality as well as in terms of his musicianship, doesn't adhere to rules. He's self-taught, and he doesn't know what's right and wrong. He just has a feeling, and that feeling is the thing that takes him to those places that other people wouldn't necessarily have thought. Certainly often trained musicians just look at him, aghast. How is it even possible?
Again, he's not dissecting anything. He is swimming in the mystery as well, and going like, where else can it take me? And I think that's where I live too. I'm not trained. I'm self-taught. I don't understand theory, but I have a strong sense of, I just try to keep my ears as big as possible and listen and feel and keep my my intuition kind of always open.
I wonder if there's a similarity. I get this sense. Well, I know XTC are often regarded as musicians in the sense that many people haven't heard about them, but the people have who are really into them, and they're often musicians. But I also get the sense that you're a musician's musician, or you hang around with, I don't know, people like Jacob Collier, who are other musicians are really very, very excited about. Is that fair to say?
I think that's very kind, and thank you. I hope that's
it's
true
just
for people.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's the company that you keep, but it's people who know their music really respect you. They really seem to like what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm just making you embarrassed now.
Yeah, you're pumping me with useless air.
One of the things that I know you like riffs, you like a good guitar riff, and again, XTC like to do that in a again, not in a non-indulgent way, but it's also the sort of the repetitions of the riff and what can happen if you repeat and repeat and repeat, and that happens a lot in on unexpected instruments in Apple Venus, but throughout their work, and if you think about something like the opening riff on Hospital, your song Hospital, for example, it's not a million miles away from something like Stupidly Happy or something that Andy Partridge might do. Is you do it's true to say you like a riff and you like a repetition.
Yeah, because I think it's a part of the hookiness. I think I've always viewed guitar as getting to play other parts of the coda or the chorus or the whatever, like things that help you identify the song. Or be like, oh yeah, I know that song because I know that riff. I've always loved that marriage of things. I think I move in and out of that space as to not be too repetitive or too like to break my own rules, and to come back to the center of what I think songwriting is. It's changing all the time. And it used to always be attached to a riff. It was always like, that's how it starts for me.
Mm-hmm.
And now I don't feel as much that way.
And I suppose the riff starts meaning different things as it is repeated, and then put in
Exactly.
conjunction with other things. It becomes differently interesting as it's repeated.
A melodic coda, I think, is something I'm always looking for in any song, no matter where it appears. Piano, guitar, vocal melody, whatever. Like I'm just always looking for those moments.
What about lyrically? Are you drawn to XTC's music from a lyrical point of view? And actually, I'm just thinking somewhere in your catalogue you have a song called Frank Lloyd Wright. XTC are likely to write songs about. In fact, Andy takes credit or claims credit for the Talking Heads album, the title of the Talking Heads album, more songs
Really?
about buildings and food. There's a bit.
Well,
Chris Franz also claims credit for it, but I slightly believe Andy's story more than Chris Franz's story. But
sure.
The point is, XTC could be writing songs about buildings and food as much as the Talking Heads. And you could.
I'll just say that's actually a cover. It's a Paul Simon cover. So of course Paul Simon would also write songs about architects probably before I went. I think Frank Lloyd Wright was actually a friend of his as well. And then that was a song written to him when he died. But I mean, God, that's another pillar song for me too. Like I think in the lyricism, I love how bright and vivid everything is. And nothing's off limits. And like I'm very fascinated with the lines that he lands on for his choruses, like push your car from the road or move your car. It's push.
Yeah.
Push your car from the road. Such a vivid image of what's going on there. Like it's telling you, like it's giving you like it's giving you context. It's giving you a metaphor for keep going, but it's also like it's also saying like you're kind of not exactly where you want to be yet, but it's like kind of push the boulder up the hill, push your car from the road. I love finding those sort of lines that you don't always suspect or don't always think of. They don't appear to be chorusy, but they're like they end up making such great human statements,
And as you're saying that, you're making me realize push your car from the road. It's 6 words of single syllables. It's not a 5-year-old could understand that. It's not it's not complicated, but it is poetic, and that there's
100%.
And in that sense, I think XTC are not. They've got a wide vocabulary, but are not pretentious because they don't sound as though they're just trying to obscure things or they're direct.
Yes, exactly. They're not overly clever. They're not making fun of their fans, and they're not saying like you guys wouldn't get it. Hope you get a dictionary one day. They're inviting you in to the scene, and you get to be the observer, and you get to place yourself there. Like I think that's the coolest fucking thing in the world. I love diving into songs, not to understand them mechanically, but to project my own life onto it. There's like this one Bjork lyric that I think of all the time. I have no idea what she was going through, and it's a very simple lyric, but it's when we broke up, I started wearing lipstick again. And that line, it's like such a simple line, but it meant so much to me when I heard it. It's just that feeling of suddenly needing to get back out there and proving to yourself that you're worthy of love, and you're going to use lipstick as a means to get somebody else to see you and prove that to you because someone has just robbed you of that, I just spill my life over all those lyrics. I have no idea if that's what she intended to say, or it might have meant something else, but it's just like, it doesn't matter. That lyric's mine now.
Yeah.
It means I've associated.
Sometimes you can mishear a lyric, and
I love those moments too.
And it means something to you. And then you think, oh, you didn't actually sing that.
People have misheard my lyrics and sang them back to me, and I've gone, shit, that's better. Better.
Yeah.
So funny.
I get the impression that in your lyrics, you are happy about ambiguity, you and about, creating a sort of impression rather than being, this is X equals Y. You don't have to understand you can have the audience can have a general sense of where you are, but it doesn't have to be so specific, or maybe that can bring them into listening to it.
I think I'm always trying to go in and out of specificity and ambiguity, like keeping a healthy line between the two, because I think they both shatter each other. They both break each other open. I think that's the most powerful sort of game, quote unquote, of songwriting, and trying to find that perfect balance. And yeah, I am comfortable with ambiguity because I live in that a lot, like for myself. And I love lyrics that have a heartbeat, but I don't fully know exactly what they're saying literally. That to me is more, in the end, is more like emotionally literate.
There's a line that always sticks with me, and this is another end of the spectrum, but Michael Stipe from REM saying that you tried to write words that resisted meaning. That's quite an interesting idea. And I mean, that's true of him in particular, I think, and not everybody wants to get as abstract as that, but you sort of think with REM songs, you think then you know what they're talking about, and then if you investigate, you think, oh, I'm not too sure if I do, and that ambiguity is really very interesting.
Well, and it takes on a whole new meaning of its own.
Yeah.
To resist me, and that's very fascinating. I like that idea a lot.
Yeah, because it's somehow not just nonsense. He's not just singing kind of abstract words put next to each other, but it and again, some REM songs make more sense than others. But yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's going to stick with me now. I want to think a lot about that.
Are you still writing every day? That's an interesting technique, that you make yourself write every day.
Yeah, I still try to. I mean, it can be musical or not. The whole goal is to just be able to articulate something. Not even articulate, just to jot some evidence that you're alive still onto a page. I do a lot of just like nonsensical writing, kind of done by timer. It just helps me shake the tree every day. So yeah, I will be on just confessional. The last 2 months, I've been pretty bad at it. Like, just since this year started, it's been a really hard year to stay consistent with anything. But I did just finish a record.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm the most excited about it that I've been over anything, and that's been nice. That now I'm kind of in this weird no man's land where it's completed. And I'm just waiting for the next busy stretch to start. And I'm resisting.
Yeah, resist everything.
I'm resisting that meaning.
What is the time scale for all of that then? Because some of the songs you were playing, or quite a lot of the songs you were playing in Glasgow, were from that. Yeah. So when will it be released, etc.?
We're not sure yet. Probably like in the fall or like late summer or something. So yeah, a ways.
Yeah, but quite weird to know that you've finished it now, but you'll be talking about it in the fall.
I know, weird.
Yeah,
it's very strange.
And have you got an album title and that sort of thing?
I have one. Yeah.
Are you going to share it?
That's a good question. Should I? I'll save it. I'll save it for now. But I do have a title. Yeah.
We'll watch that space. I'm intrigued because I knew that you were a fan of Apple Venus, but I'm also intrigued that you've then gone back to things like Drums and Wires and so on, which could be by a different band. Does that, in terms of its sound and so, does that represent the sort of range of your listening? Are you pretty Catholic in your tastes from that point of view?
100%. Yeah, I don't really have a lot of. I mean, there's like a few guardrails. Like, I don't love ska, for example. I'm not a big reggae fan, but like also anything that's of quality, I'm kind of like, I'm down. I'm open. I love a wide array of things. And it gets wider all the time. Like, and I think that's how it should be,
Ska and reggae will catch up with you eventually.
Maybe so. Who knows?
Yeah.
I'm open to it. Come find me.
But it also strikes that your answer fits in with what I think is just a weird phenomenon, that you've won Grammy Awards for something called Americana and something called folk. And yet when I listen to your music, actually this podcast is called What Do You Call That Noise? The answer to the question, what do you call that noise, is This Is Pop. And, XTC's single, This Is Pop, is about, removing labels. But one of the things that has been interesting for me to talk and write about XTC's music is that it's not like I'm, there are some brilliant bands out there who just play one type of music, their whole thing. It could be a reggae band, it could be a heavy metal band or whatever. And it seems to me that when I listen to your stuff, it isn't constrained by any label, and certainly not folk or Americana. It doesn't, those things don't contain you.
Yeah, I don't relate to the genres that have been given, and I get why people do it because they have to in some ways, but I don't. Yeah, I just try to redefine what they mean for me. Like folk to me just means songwriting. Like some of my favorite songwriting legends are attached to that title or genre or whatever. And so I don't hear that. I don't hear that in the music, but I actually, it gives me, I get a big laugh out of it. I enjoy it. It's just like a running joke. Like, here's a gentle folk song, and then it's just all electric guitars. It's silly. It's really silly.
And actually, I work as a journalist, so I know the temptation to categorize things. It's very, very helpful if you can just say, oh, well, that thing fits in that slot there because we've got that slot to cover it. But
there's a whole library of music. You got to know where to go.
Yeah. And talking about styles and so on, is the gig that I saw in Glasgow reflective of the new material in that you were doing a lot of piano, maybe more piano than you've done in the past?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of piano on this record, which I had always wanted to do, but just never quite found a way into it. Just always felt like, well, no, I got to identify myself as a guitar player. And now I care a lot less about that. Again, it's going back to what songs actually mean to me. And they're not beholden to a certain style of playing or a certain instrument. It's just about the song. And so piano, I felt like shattered that glass for me. And I really needed something that felt true and mysterious and something I could get lost in. And I did that in a similar way with guitar. Like I wrote everything in one tuning, and it was a tuning I discovered last January. I just like opened up this book of tuning sort of recommendations and found this one, and I was so frustrated by it for a full day. And then a friend came over and we ended up writing this song together. I was like, you put your guitar in this too. And then we ended up finding it kind of together. And then after we wrote that song for the rest of the year, I was just like, well, I'm writing another song in this tuning. And so, yeah, I felt like piano was like going to a new open tuning in a way. I've just been following my ears with it and being like, what does this do?
Yeah. And I suppose there's a lot of evidence that the actual instrument itself, whether it's different varieties of guitars or a completely different instrument, can be very creative and can be very stimulating. And because, an E chord played on a guitar doesn't sound like an E chord on the piano. And that can spark you to go in a different direction that you wouldn't have thought of.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or even physically where you move your fingers, it's like where your fingers feel like they should be going.
Yeah, for me, I have no idea where they feel like they should be going. Like it's just the way that they sound to me, the way that the notes sound together, which is so fun.
Yeah. Well, I'm very, very, very much looking forward. Can I look forward for another 6 months until your album comes out? But I am looking forward to it. And by that time, you'll have 1 million XTC fans also anticipating it highly as well. So it's...
I love that.
It'll be great. And very much looking forward to seeing you next time you're on this side of the Atlantic as well.
Thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciated this conversation.
You're welcome. I've really enjoyed the chat. It's great. Thank you very much for that.
What do you call that noise?
Thanks again to Madison Cunningham and also to Stephen Dahill for providing this month's lovely song. And thank you for listening. And thank you to the many wonderful podcast supporters on Patreon who include the following Knights in Shining Karma: Terry Arnett, Kevin Birch, Lorenzo Ciarci, Cale Corbett, Liam Duggan, Jamie Dunn, Alison Eels, Jeff Farris, Mike Grafe, Robert Graham, Camille Henry, Stephen Hope, Alan Hughes, Rick James, Peter Kitchen, Marek Kraus, Jesper Kumberg, Robert Lawlaw, Adrian Loon, Liz Lynch, Murray Meikle, Yusuf Murrah, Max Nyaho, Amy Parkinson, Tim Parsons, Mark Reed, James Reimer, Jamie Rastamora, Michael Sutcliffe, Steve Swift, Mark Thomas, Nigel Waller, John Wedemeyer, Lucy Verbitsky and Martin Whitley. That's all for now. See you again next time.